Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne from Generation to Generation, and our guest today is Noel Fenderson. Noel has been on previously. If you haven't heard that episode, I'll put it in the description box. But Noel, for people that don't know who you are, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for having me. So I am from Memphis, Tennessee in the U.S., and I am a husband to Brittany, and we have 4 beautiful children: Lindley Grace, Wynn, Brooks, and Vivian. They are 9, 7, 5, and 3. And I'm also a businessman, so I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a few home service businesses here locally, and then we also have a couple of nonprofits that we are stewarding as well.
And then if people want to find out more about you, maybe find out some about these businesses, where can they do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm on all the social media channels under Noel Fenderson, and then the different companies are under My Town brand. So My Town Movers, My Town Roofing, My Town Miracles, My Town Properties. So we have a few different ones, and then Ministry spelled MEN. And My Town Miracles are the 2 nonprofits.
Okay, and I'll put some of those links in the description. I have to find all of them. There's so many, but I'll find them. I'll put them in the description box. So if you're listening, they're there ready for you to go and check out. So you've got, you listed like 3 different businesses there, plus 2 charitable arms. There's probably others that you don't even know about that you've got going on. How long ago did you start these? When did you start becoming this entrepreneur and taking over My Town?
Yeah, so I was a police officer full time, and I still serve as a reserve on the police department. And God just gave me an amazing opportunity. It was in 2012 is when the conversation started, and then we officially launched the first company in 2013. That's when we started.
Now, I may have this wrong. I don't know who I heard it from, so you can just correct me. You can fact check me once I've said this. But you're in the SWAT, and is it true that Brittany, your wife, said something to the effect of, I don't really like knowing if you're not going to come home, and so I'd like you to figure out something else that you can do. Was that a part of this conversation and how you got into doing this?
Oh my goodness, that definitely played into it. For sure. When we had our first, when she was pregnant with Lindley Grace, is when we really started having those conversations more seriously. And just the Lord arranged a lot of different things, and that was definitely part of it, though. Wanting to steward the family and whatnot, and so yeah, that's a whole different conversation we'd have to have.
Well, we can do that.
It sounds like an interesting conversation.
So, what is My Town Miracles?
So My Town Miracle. I know, I love the hat, Andrew. We're matching.
Yeah. By the way, we're not sponsored by My Town Miracles. I'm just wearing it because I like the guy.
Yeah. So in Memphis, it's one of the most poverty-stricken places in the U.S., and there are over 100,000 children that are living in extreme conditions. The conditions are so bad that if people personally knew of them, they would radically change their life to help them. We really believe that. So we provide security and stability to children. So we walk alongside actually other nonprofits who they're in the trenches day in and day out, and they're helping children. and they don't have a line item budget to help individual children, their individual needs. So when they have these extreme dire conditions and needs, they reach out to us, and we partner with them, and we help individual children and families. So typically we're walking alongside single moms in that way, just helping them. We provide shelter, vehicles, just resources like that, and then connect them with things that really change the trajectory of their life. So,
Can you give us a story?
yeah, my favorite story is we got introduced to this sweet family. Uh, the the single mom, there's 3 daughters, and they were living on the floor. So they were, on the verge of being kicked out of their place. They have no beds, no refrigerator, no washer. I mean, just things that we take for granted. And they were living on the floor, just in extreme condition, only eating when they went to school. And we got introduced to them, fell in love with them, and we started walking alongside them, and really changed the trajectory of life. That's been a couple years in the making, and she is working full time. She has graduated high school. The oldest one was the main one that we, was the connection with our partner nonprofit that was with the ministry that they were a part of. So we started walking alongside them and her, and it's so cool. I literally last week I just got an update. She has graduated, full-time job, doing really well. So we're super excited about that. But just to see, a generational change, changing the trajectory of their life, where so often if someone does not come alongside and help them, then they're going to be stuck in this system of generational poverty, and it's really heartbreaking. So we do for one what we wish we could do for many.
Yeah,
so,
it's really good as well. I mean, you're not just providing an immediate need, you're providing for a need which ultimately will pay off not just now but in the longer term. Like you said, you're changing the way that not just that girl and her future generations live, but even her immediate family that she lives with now will all benefit from that.
Yeah,
so
that's really right. Good. Thank you.
So we've just come back from Brazil, dashing all over, and we dash all over the world. But it is rumoured that you too have been dashing all over the world. Can you tell us a bit about where you go outside the US and why you go? Because Andrew was saying earlier, hey, you've got ministry at home, you've got ministry at home, you've got your charitable arm, you're doing things like with this girl and helping people through. You're doing so much in the US. Why would you get on a plane, which we know in itself is not a lot of fun, and fly around the world? What for? What takes you there?
Oh my goodness. Well, in the simplest answer, I would just say that we are commanded to. We're commanded. Some people like to use the word called, but I don't think that's a strong enough word. We're commanded to reach the nations, as you guys speak of so often. And God has just given us opportunities around the world to do that. So we like to say we go to the places that your typical church won't go to, maybe due to the danger or relational need or something. But we take teams to different places. We actually just got back from some mountains up in Nepal, Kathmandu area. So that's the most recent trip that we went on. But yeah, I don't know. We can go into more of that why, but just, the simple answer is we are commanded to. And our heart breaks for those that have never heard the gospel. And there are billions of those still in the world. So that is why.
Yeah, and I love that Brittany, your wife, was like, you need to not do so much of this SWAT stuff because it's too dangerous. And so you've replaced it with, I'm going to go to other dangerous countries. But I guess
Oh,
she's more
touche,
accepting of that.
touche. Yeah.
So you go, you to have others go with you. Can you give us an example, like when you went to Nepal,
Mhm.
what did you go for? What did you go to do? What was your expectation in going? Because people go to these different places for different reasons. So paint us a bit of your vision for going.
A lot of our relationships are with the local pastors that live there. So we come alongside them and really, we view it as kind of a short term trip where we're coming alongside them. And we just encourage them, equip them with teaching and just practical, simple, reproducible things for their church plants and their ministry and discipleship. So our heart really is to, you know, assess the progress of the gospel, see how it's going, see what they're doing, to see where their challenges are, where their setbacks are, and just how we can encourage and love on them while we're there. And then also for the future, as we continue to send teams, we're able to know how we can make the biggest impact. And so really, really feel like we need to be there with them to do that and see it and model it. And it really does something, of course, when you go, as you know, it encourages yourself more than it does them. It so often feels, but we really need to see it and see what they're doing. And the relational component, I definitely think that's so important
So
as well.
what are they doing? What is happening in a nation like Nepal?
Yeah, well, Nepal, it's a closed type country as far as there's an anti, you're not allowed to convert uh, people from other religions into Christianity. It's a mainly Hindu, heavily populated area. Very dark, uh, demonic. You can just feel the strongholds and oppression the moment you land. And so they're all over different places throughout the city, the urban and the rural areas, and they are planting churches and multiplying disciples. That's their their main mission, their lifestyle of what they're doing. So they're raising up leaders and planting churches with disciples in different areas all throughout.
So it's a persecuted nation.
Yeah, it's very different pockets of it. It being in between China, India, there's different pockets of places that are very heavily persecuted. We had some friends that actually came over from India while we were at a place in Nepal, and one of the brothers just loved this guy, sweet husband and father, and he just looked at us and said, "I fully expect that I will die for my faith." And he's been beaten and persecuted heavily. It's not like that in all the places around in Nepal. Often it's more just not wanting people to convert, and they'll kick you out of places or the country. Um, I'll give an example. We were able to share the gospel with the sweet young man in one of the mountainsides, and with tears in his eyes, he told us that he could not publicly follow Jesus, and he just said, if I do, I will lose my business. I will be kicked out of my family. I will be kicked out of the village. I will not have access to water, and really heartbreaking things over there. Definitely much different challenge than we have here in the U.S.
So
So
how do you handle it? I mean, we understand that because we have to face that. There's a different sort of challenge when you're going to help them, and then you are faced with people like that who in many ways have more to teach us than we have to teach them.
Yes.
In terms of standing for the gospel, enduring to the end, being prepared to die for standing up for Jesus. And I know we have things to give them, but it is a whole other challenge when you're face to face with people like that, don't you find?
It really is, and I would tell you, I still am very far from handling that perfectly at all. I still, I'm trying to reconcile, how in the world these guys are doing that, and what do you say to someone other than the love of Jesus and letting the gospel compel them to live that out. But yeah, these brothers and sisters that are experiencing this, I mean, really, I tell them all the time. I feel like all these places that we go, whether it be coming back from Nepal, Kathmandu, places in Africa, I tell them, like, you guys need to come over here and do a mission trip over here and teach us. We have a lot of knowledge and training and wisdom, but the faith and experiential side that these brothers and sisters have, it is something that is so encouraging to us and our teams that go, for sure.
I mean, you have, when we in the West read the Bible and, it says, be faithful even unto death and all this kind of stuff, we understand it, we get the theory, okay, fine, that sounds good, I think I can do that. But in reality, in Western countries, we don't actually get to sort of live those verses out. We don't get faced with the challenges to the point where we now, okay, right, that verse is rubber hitting the road right now. If I stand up for my faith, then the likelihood I'm going to die. We in where were we? Where was it in India? Where they said something similar, that if I come out with my faith and I let people know that I've become a follower of Jesus, then I'll get thrown out of my family, the community, lose businesses, etc. And people working with that group said to them, you obviously want them in the family, you want them in the community to be able to be an influence. And they said to them, one of the things they say is, don't tell anyone about your faith for the first year. They say, live it out, and during the course of that year, people will start to ask you questions. Why are you different? Why have you changed? And then they will be asking you these questions. And they say, so that for that first year, don't say anything. Just let your life speak. And so that's one of the things they say to them. But I'm sure there's different ways of going about it. But it like you said, when you talk to someone in the West about these things, we can talk as much as we want about the theory and about, what the Bible says. But when you're out there face to face with it, and then people like that come and talk to you, it's like, boy.
I think we should all be challenged to let your life speak and wait for people to ask you. Who was the guest that we had on? And they said a while ago, they said somebody from a persecuted nation was talking to them, and they were from the West, and they said, do you get put in prison for your faith? And he said, no. He said, would you get persecuted faith? He said, no, and asked questions like that, and he's going, no.
You get thrown out of your family?
Do you get thrown out of family? No. He said, wow, you must be telling people about Jesus everywhere. And he said, well, no, we don't. They said, well, what happens to you if you do? And this Westerner said, well,
people laugh at us.
We get laughed at. And this persecuted Christian said, can you please tell them Jesus is worth it?
Amen. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it's a whole different ball game. A whole different ball game out there. So where else have you been? You've been to Nepal, and you've been to
So Nepal, Kathmandu, in Africa, we've been to Ghana, Togo, Benin, been to Peru, been to the Amazon, to some villages along the Amazon, Lima. So I'm trying to get to the level that you guys are at.
No. So, out of all the places you've been, which is the one that captured your heart most?
Oh my goodness, that is a very hard question. It's
Well, not
hard.
most. One of the ones that captured your heart a lot. Then.
Oh my goodness, I just coming back from Nepal, definitely. I think just probably because it's the most recent, is so fresh on my mind and my heart, and just how well those brothers and sisters loved us and showed hospitality to us. And the biggest, it was way different. I mean, Africa, the other different places that we've been, I mean, there's spiritual strongholds, and there is false prosperity gospels, and there's lots of different issues. But I guess the big difference that I really saw when we landed in Kathmandu, immediately you're hit with a big shrine that says, "Welcome to the birthplace of Lord Buddha." And I would tell you, from that moment, we felt the weight of the spiritual war and the idol worship going on. And from that moment, there's idols on every corner. There's idols in cars. There's just everywhere you go, just you really felt and saw the stronghold and demonic oppression. Our first time there, they took us to this river, and they were literally burning bodies on the side of the river, and they would take the bodies and they would throw them up on this altar, and then they would dump the ashes in the river, and they thought that helped with the reincarnation process. So it really, you're hearing people screaming, ladies screaming, you're smelling these bodies being burned, you're visually seeing it. It just hits all your senses in such a dramatic way, where, you're like, Lord, this is a huge, urgent spiritual and physical need that is going on here. So I just think that it's captured my heart so much, because it's a mixture of the love I have for the people, but also the heartbreak that is going on there right now as we speak.
Yeah. Flipping this back to the West, you go out to these places, you see things like that. You see the pressures, severe consequences that people can pay in those countries. And then you go back to the West, and then you still have to engage with believers there that just have a different perspective, different life, different things that they're having to deal with. How has that affected your attitude when engaging with Western Christians back in America, back in your hometown, when, maybe they're scared to go out and talk to people about the faith in case they get laughed at? For example, for us, we would go to persecuted nations, and we'd spend time there. We'd see a very small amount of money in the West could go so far in some of these other countries. But yet then when we would go to like mega churches in America, and you would have these plasma TV screens all over the place. You would have these like mega thick carpets, and we would walk around and we'd be going, "Oh, for crying out loud, are you serious? Are you putting all this money into all these things that don't mean anything? It's not doing anything. You could have put that plasma TV towards someone in Nepal, and it could have funded them for 3 months or something like that." And so it gave us this like this real attitude for a while, and God really had to deal with us about that.
Yeah.
But so how, what kind of struggles have you had in terms of when you go back to the West because of the perspectives that you've picked up and the lives that you've engaged with in these other countries?
Yeah, well, those struggles you're talking about are so, oh my goodness, they're so real. And it's a fine line, and it's a mixture of a holy frustration. But at times it can be an unhealthy anger and frustration. And I even need a few weeks to process when I get back, before I'm even, actively sharing about it and stuff, because it's so easy to come back and look around and just be like, what are we doing? Like, we're just playing games. And I guess the heartbreak side of that is we don't, mean to. And when I say we, the church in the West, we don't mean to. Our intentions, I think our heart, for the most part, is pure, and we just don't even understand, because we haven't experientially lived out our faith like that. So we just, because on a smaller level, when we experience that with our nonprofit here locally, we always, when we're sharing, we're trying to merge the secular world with the sacred world, and we're trying to connect the business community into the poverty stricken community. And poverty is just a statistic. It's just a number until you personally know someone. And when you personally know them, it changes everything. And I think that's kind of the case when you look at it from a global perspective. We want to put our head down in the sand, and we don't want to face it. The maybe guilt, the conviction, the holy convictions and things that come when we think about it and talk about it, that combined with the overwhelming need, I think fills people. They don't want to address it. They don't want to confront it. And so I try to just ask the Lord to give me wisdom and grace as I'm communicating about it. How do you express an urgent? I mean, we could talk about the physical need or the spiritual need. How do you express that in a loving way when, we're just so often talking about football games or swimming pool parties or things like that. And I really have to just keep looking into the mirror and looking at my own life and checking my own heart, because I am just as guilty and struggle with the same things as well. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't.
People talk about culture shock when you go to other countries, but we have found, and I think it's true, that the biggest shock is the reverse culture shock when you're going back to your own country. And I think too little attention is paid to that. People, will process through the whole culture shock, but then you go home and expected to carry on and not pay attention. And it's huge. I had an experience. I was walking through quite a big church, not too far from where you live, and it had plush carpets on the floor.
This is the one I was referring to.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
All right. Plush carpets on the floor, and it was a multi-million-dollar building. And I was walking around, and internally, my eyes were rolling in my head. I was like, really? You could spend money on this? I mean, this was just all going on in my mind while I'm walking around nicely smiling at everyone. You know how you do? And tangibly, I felt Jesus tap me on the shoulder, and he just said this. He said, Daphne, this is my bride too.
Amen. Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that. I mean, it pulled me right up, because, you start criticising the bride and the bridegroom's not very happy. So I think just that encounter for me has pulled me back, instead of thinking, well, how could you? So no, this is another expression of Jesus' bride. It looks different here, different challenges. And I think personally, the challenges that the church faces in the West are greater than the church faces in persecuted nations. The apathy,
Absolutely.
the secularism, it all creeps in and you don't even realise it's there.
Yeah, that's so true. And there's a group I'm a part of that is a part of an underground movement, and one of the leaders says all the time, he says, persecution keeps you clean, and you're not involved in all these things that we're talking about when there's persecution. You're just truly encouraging each other, trying to persevere, trying to survive, and so it's definitely trying to live in both of those worlds and empathize, ask a lot of questions. I found is very helpful.
You're good
as
at
well.
questions.
Yeah, you're very good at questions.
Well, so are y'all. Thank you.
No, that was the first thing I noticed about you.
Yeah. I know with like Richard Vermbrandt, who my mum was involved with when he was out of solitary confinement in Romania, and he went to America and saw what the church was like there, and he said, "Put me back in prison. I'd rather be back in solitary confinement than here in the West." You hear statements like that, and it's like, wow, that is, it's wild.
It is.
Having said that, the times are changing and the pressure is on. I wouldn't say the persecution is on, but the pressure is on, and we had best learn from these people. So if you look back over your time in Nepal or anywhere, can you think of one person that you think of and you think, he's the man I'd like to be like? He'd been through persecution, but he could be a role model to me. And why?
Yeah. I mean, I could name multiple people in multiple places and countries, but really just their lifestyle of just their relationship and walking with the Lord. It is just so amazing to see and watch, where truly nothing else matters but that, and making him known and doing that through their families. I really love being over there, seeing how close their families are and how they're all living together in community. And they're truly, I mean, just like you guys are about, I mean, they're generationally passing down the promises of God, and they're discipling their kids to reach the nations. And that is just their life. It's not a program that they do. It's not an hour a week Bible study. It is, they truly have a lifestyle that is so awesome to see. And that would probably be the intimacy that comes along with that, with the relationship of walking with Jesus. It's just beautiful. It's really beautiful to see. So that would be the main thing.
Yeah, I can remember being in a situation and I was visiting this family, and one of the children came running up to me when I got in the door, and all he wanted to do was to check out that I knew Jesus. That was your son. That was your son. So it is being passed on, Noel. I mean, I will never forget that. I hadn't gotten the door, and he sat me down the sofa, and I had...
This lady looks like a sinner.
I had 10 minutes or more, Genesis to Revelation, and check that I know it. So it is, your passion is being passed on to your kids, and that is, I think, one of the greatest testimonies that you could have.
Yeah.
Amen.
So given that this emerging generation statistically can complete the Great Commission, that the completion of the Great Commission is within sight of a generation, How does that spur you on?
Well, I mean, it spurs me on just to, just like it says in Second Peter, to hasten the day of the Lord's return. When you're looking at Matthew 24, and that the gospel is going to be preached to all the nations, then the end will come. To live with an eternal mindset, and what we do now in the next few years will impact all of eternity. So casting that vision, always thinking about that, always talking about that with the kids. Daphne, you were all super influential in that as well, about being even more intentional with talking about, Jesus and the white horse is near and coming back. So just talking about it a lot around the dinner table, thinking about it, reading scriptures about it, that, it just, time is so short. And we're just seeing so many great things that the Lord is doing here locally and globally and in our family. And it just, we don't want to lose that. We want to hang on to that and always be thinking about it and talking about it. So I guess the intentionality would be the biggest piece of when I think about that.
Yeah. And preparing your children to go and run to the finish line and see his return.
Yeah.
That is the vision that inspires me on.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, when you're in your area, you see the desperate need in your town, in your city, and you see, maybe people like what you've described, people living below the poverty line. When you see something and you could do something about it, it can keep you up at night. It makes you change maybe the course of that day because you have to go and do something about that situation. Or maybe at night you're thinking about it and you have to do something the next day. But you've had that personal interaction. You've seen something and now you realize you can have an impact into that situation. And so for you going to these other countries, you've had that personal interaction. Now you see the impact that you can have. And I think it's important for people who maybe hear this episode, wherever you are now, and you see a desperate need in your town, in your city, look at how you can be an impact in that situation, how you can help maybe turn someone's life around. But also maybe take these opportunities as well, like Noel's been talking about, to be able to go to other countries and engage in those situations, not just because there's things that you can do to help equip and empower people around the world, but because of the impact it will also have on your life as well, and how you also do life at home when you go back.
Yeah, I'll just tell you one quick little story, Noel, that I hope will encourage you. Many years ago, 14, 15 years ago, we were down the Amazon and evidently had a conversation with a husband and wife. I don't even remember the conversation. And actually, the last podcast we did was with a young man who was the son of this husband and wife that we had the conversation with. And as a result of that conversation, which it couldn't have been that significant to me because I don't remember it, that young man today now is taking over from his father in reaching the tribes down the Amazon River. So you don't know what wonderful conversation you had in Nepal or in any of these other countries, what the fruit of that was, until one day you see Jesus and somebody taps you on the shoulder and he goes, "No, you
remember that conversation?"
Yeah, look at the fruit of it. So,
yeah,
I would just encourage you to keep going and for us all to keep going, as Andrew just said.
Yeah, Noel, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's always good to see you, to get to catch up. It's been way too long, but thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Noel.
Well, thank you guys so much. Always a pleasure. So thankful for y'all.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.